It was such a brilliant week of racing, I almost don't know where to start with this week's GCN Racing News show. There's been more drama than an Oprah Winfrey interview. Pogacar on fire at Tirreno Adriatico, Van der Poel collapsing after his second stage win there, Roglič collapsing in an entirely different way at Paris-Nice, and a healthy ageing tour that had us all guessing right up to the finish line of the final stage. Plus, a rather dark cloud is now looming over British cycling after Dr. Richard Freeman was found guilty of ordering a banned substance, knowing or believing it was to dope an unnamed rider. I shall start though with more positive news, if you will pardon the pun. I honestly cannot remember a more exciting week of pro racing in my life. The stars aligned and assembled at 3 spectacular races last week. Paris-Nice didn't even get to Nice this year. The organisers ASO were forced to reroute the final 2 stages of the race after the mayor of Nice decided he didn't want the race on the Promenade des Anglais during lockdown in France. And that wasn't the only last-minute change at the race. Going into the final stage, Primož Roglič of Jumbo-Visma had won 3 stages in typically dominant fashion. He held onto the leader's jersey with a vice-like grip. But if there's anybody that knows it's not over until it's over, it's Primož Roglič. On that final stage yesterday, he was involved in 2 crashes. The first of those left him with a dislocated shoulder that he had to relocate into position himself, and the second revealed his only remaining covered bum cheek. He chased, valiantly you've got to say, and got oh so close to the back of the bunch. But with Bora Hansgrohe, Astana and others riding frantically ahead of him, he never quite managed to make contact. It was tough to watch, I've got to say, especially as it's a scenario that must seem like a case of deja vu for the Slovenian. He slipped out of the race lead and out of the top 10 on the general classification. Here's what he had to say immediately after the stage.
I was really going over myself, and at the end, it was how it was. So not much to edit. Of course, we are disappointed, but like I said, the world will not stop, and we have to look forward. It could be a lot worse, but luckily, let's say I will be fine probably in a couple of days or in a week. So first I need to take some rest, and then hopefully I'm ready for the next races.
In front of him, Max Schachmann and his team were riding to a second consecutive Paris-Nice title, a feat that's not been accomplished since Alexander Vinokourov did it in 2003. The German did say that he wished it could have been under different circumstances, but that's racing. He knows that only too well. I'm sure you'll all remember his crash late last year at Il Lombardia. Roglič, ever gracious in defeat though, was very quick to offer up his congratulations to Schachmann at the finish line, and he was also characteristically pragmatic in the aftermath. On Instagram, he said this: "Well, it's not always great, but it's life. Crashed, dislocated my shoulder, put it back in, ripped my butt, got back in the peloton, crashed again on the other side, gave my all, so did my teammates, couldn't get back to the peloton. C'est la vie." With what we know about Primož Roglič though, I do not think this will affect his mentality or motivation at all. He'll come back just as strong as ever, I think, at his next race. He's a class act. Now, whilst it was heartbreak for Roglič yesterday, it was he who was breaking hearts the previous day. Gino Mada of Bahrain Victorious was the last man standing of an early breakaway and looked set to take the first World Tour victory of his career, until Roglič put in a late attack to pass him just before the finish line. Now, it set off a discussion about giving gifts in cycling, and even in keeping friends in the sport that might return that favour at a later date. Now, we asked your opinion on this subject, and it was quite forthright. 79% of you who voted on the GCN app said that Roglič shouldn't have gifted the win. Amada himself, replying to a tweet from Neil Rogers on the matter, said it's an easy scenario, first over the line wins, I just needed to get there faster. And you can't really say fairer than that, can you? Of the 3 sprint stages over the 8 days in Paris-Nice, Sam Bennett of De Koning Quickstep took 2 of them, whilst it was Cees Bol who gave us that yearly glimpse into his speed.
It's Bol who hits the front though, Bol going to the line, oh wow, he wanted a canter, and once he got in front there was no getting around him.
The previous day's time trial was won by the young Stefan Bissiger, a rider who his manager at EF Education Nippo, Jonathan Vaughters, claims has the lowest CDA that they've ever seen. And then that final stage yesterday was won in a reduced sprint by Magnus Cort Nielsen of the same team. I mean, he just always seems to pick up a big win each and every year, doesn't he? We'll move on now to Tirreno Adriatico, and my word, we have so far seen 5 of the best days of racing that race has ever seen. Wout van Aert beating the sprinters at their own game on the opening stage, and not just any old sprinters. Caleb Ewan, one of the best in the world. The following day, he would finish 3rd behind Julian Alaphilippe and Mathieu van der Poel in a hilltop finish. But not wishing to be left out, Van der Poel himself sprinted to the win on Stage 3's uphill sprint to the line. It was Van Aert, though, who had held on to the leader's jersey from that very first day, and we were all, I think, looking forward in anticipation as to how well he'd be able to defend that on the Queen Stage to Prato di Tivo on Saturday. And the answer was rather valiantly. Isolated from his teammates with still 8 kilometres of the climb remaining, he virtually ignored all the attacks around him from the world's best climbers and just set a solid tempo, and one that he knew he could sustain right to the line. It wasn't enough to stop Tadej Pogačar opening up a gap, though. The Tour de France winner quickly caught Geraint Thomas and soon dropped him after that. A counter-attack by Simon Yates saw the Brit come agonisingly close, but it was Pogačar who took the win and the lead of the race. Behind him though, Van Aert proved that he is a force to be reckoned with in stage races. He only lost 45 seconds despite having to do much or all of the riding himself, and still finished in front of the likes of Egan Bernal, Geraint Thomas, Vincenzo Nibali and Julian Alaphilippe. It may have been deemed the Queen stage of the race on Saturday, but it was yesterday's stage that I'd been looking forward to the most all week. I've said it before, and I'm going to say it again right now. Stages with multiple short but steep climbs in quick succession produce more exciting and less predictable racing than the high mountains. Now I know many of you out there will disagree with that, but that's my take and I'm sticking to it, especially after yesterday. I mean, what did we even witness? With 70 kilometres remaining, some of the biggest names in our sport were already either on the attack or getting dropped. One of the most active of those, of course, was Mathieu van der Poel of Alpecin Phoenix. Ever impatient, he put in multiple digs before finding himself solo with still more than 50 kilometres of the stage remaining. He later claimed in an interview that he'd attacked there because he was cold. But to say that he was allowed to go up the road because he was no threat on the general classification, I think would do him a disservice. The grimaces of pain etched on the riders' faces behind him said it all. They were finding it tough, but the Dutch champion still pulled out a lead of over 3 minutes at one point on the stage. It looked like it was going to be a formality for him, didn't it? But even Van der Poel started to pay the price for that monumental effort, and when Pogačar attacked his rivals inside the last 20 kilometres, the gap started free-falling. And my goodness, wasn't that a close call at the finish? Van der Poel just holding on for his second stage victory, but his victory celebration, if you can call it that, couldn't have been more in contrast to the one 2 days previously. He used his last morsel of energy to press the lap button on his Wahoo and didn't have any energy left to raise his arms aloft. Anyway, here's what he had to say after that second stage win.
I don't even know how I got to the finish line today. The last 10-15k were really hell for me today. I thought he was going to get me. I couldn't ride 300 watts anymore. I was really completely empty with the cold and the long solo I did, so I thought he was going to get me, but I'm really happy to get rewarded with the win.
I feel cold just watching him. His stage win there means that of the 11 stage races in which he's competed since 2018, he's won at least one stage in all but one of them. An exciting time in cycling, and in fact here's what Bradley Wiggins had to say on all of that in our post-race breakaway show yesterday.
There's a lot more emphasis now on obviously the days of weight. We know Team Sky are going to ride, or Ineos, or certain other big teams. Now it's a case of let's get them up the road because we'll fire riders up there as the race picks up. But that is informed by the big riders at the time as well. When you've got the best rider in the peloton in Mathieu van der Poel, doing whatever he wants, there's no point in waiting. You may as well fire riders up the road. And a bit like Sagan last year when he really had to go in that Giro stage, and sort of Swifty was already up the road, and by the time he catches him, he's in a position to win a stage. So it's fantastic for us to watch here. It really gives us something to talk about. We can't almost keep across everything, can we? But also what it does allow is it allows new names to come through. We saw, a Brit on the podium at Kuurne, Brussels Kuurne, Omloop, another Brit, and that was unheard of 10, 15 years ago.
It is hard to keep across of all the racing, Brad, you're not wrong there. There's no doubt, though, that Van der Poel had to dig very deep for that stage win. Too deep to recover in time for Milano-San Remo? Well, Jeroen Swart, a South African coach who works for UAE Team Emirates, seems to think so. Time will tell, I guess, but we're in for one hell of a race this coming Saturday. Do not miss it. Tirreno Adriatico, incidentally, continues today with its final road stage before the traditional time trial, which ends the race tomorrow. And so now we shall move on to the Healthy Aging Tour, a 3-day stage race in the Netherlands that we were hugely proud to have live coverage of on GCN+. It all started on Wednesday on the Aston circuit. Here's how Marty McDonald called the finish.
In they come, and it's Alice Barnes here from Canyon Stram. Is the British champion going to take it? Oh, crash on the front. Lorena Wiebes goes down. They managed to avoid it. Is it going to be Barnes? And here comes SD Work, throws on the line. Apologies, Lorena Wiebes going down there in the finish. The chicane through there just clipped the back wheel, and it's going through there. It's Jolien Dura from SD Works that just got up right on the line there to Alice Barnes. Oh, that was a crash there for Lorena Wiebes.
A fantastic win for Jolien Dura, but a nasty crash for Lorena Wiebes, who remarkably managed to pick herself up to not only finish that stage, but also continue on with the Stage 2 time trial. That was a pan-flat 14-kilometre out and back affair on a day that was so windy, the organisers of the race were forced not only to move the stage race to later in the day, but also to ban the use of time trial bikes due to safety concerns. Neither of those, though, were any concern to Ellen van Dijk. The Trek Segafredo rider has won this race 3 times already in the past, and in putting at least 26 seconds into all of her rivals in that time trial, she set herself up beautifully for a 4th. She and her teammates, though, would have their work cut out on the final day of the race. There, they'd be taking on 17 laps, each of which includes the infamous Vanberg. Now, that is a rare climb in that region of the Netherlands, and it's only there because it was a landfill site that was later paved over with cobblestones. It's a brute of a climb, made even more brutal on the day by some more horrific weather. And what a stage it was. I was supposed to be busy preparing to commentate on Tirreno Adriatico, but I couldn't keep my eyes off that race. What a ride as well by 21-year-old Lonneke Uneken at the SD Works. She'd put in a couple of attacks before finally going clear, and she was never to be seen again until after the finish line. 1 minute and 14 seconds behind her was the Danish champion Emma Norsgaard of Team Movistar, her 3rd runner-up spot in just 5 days of racing this year. A big win is around the corner, no doubt. And the GC battle was extremely close too. Van Dijk and her teammates just doing enough to defend the race lead, 6 seconds in front of Lisa Brennauer, who finished 3rd on the day. Here's what Van Dijk had to say after that victory.
Yeah, it was very hectic and especially cold in the end. I mean, it was a very exciting day, I think, because it was not easy to control the race, and it was a bit of a surprise that all of a sudden we heard that Lonneke had such a big gap, so then it was like, oh shit, we need to go full gas. But I had really an amazing team. They worked so hard and they all were like full gas for this, so it was really, really cool to see that. And in the end, also the last climb was still actually pretty exciting. I think it wasn't clear who won until after the finish, so I'm just super happy I made it, but it was for sure close.
Did you lose the hope somewhere?
Actually, I felt good the whole race, and my team was super good, but in the end I got so cold and I had really problems to shift because my hands, I couldn't move them anymore. And if you can't shift here on the cobbles, then and you are in too big of a gear, then it's really, really hard. So I lost a little bit contact with the best riders in the second last lap, but I could close the gap again, and then I knew that the last climb was also going to be a hard one. Yeah.
Fantastic stuff. And now what I've loved most about this past week is seeing a crop of riders who are young, entertaining, cool, not afraid to attack early, and who will do wonders for our sport of cycling. They are going to inspire a whole new generation of cycling fans and future pros. I genuinely think there's never been a better time to be a bike racing fan. Long may it continue. After all of that, it's almost hard to believe that we've got so much more top-level racing to come over the next week. But indeed we have. So coming up on GCN Plus over the next few days, well, tomorrow it's that concluding stage of Tirreno Adriatico, a short time trial which could see Filippo Ganna break the speed of sound. But then after just 3 days of rest, the who's who of the men's pro peloton will assemble in Milan for a 300-kilometre race to San Remo. Now, there are so many top names that it's impossible to name them all here on the GCN Racing News Show, but rest assured, we are very likely to see a huge attack from Alaphilippe, Van der Poel and Van Aert on the Poggio. Stay tuned for our big preview of that race, which will be coming to the channel later on this week. Both of those races, incidentally, are available on GCN Plus in all territories except for Latin America and New Zealand. Before that, we have got Knokke-Course on Wednesday in Belgium. There you're going to see the likes of Tom Pidcock, Jasper Philipsen, Mark Cavendish, Lorena Wiebes, Emma Norsgaard and Jolien Dora do battle. The men's race does have live coverage. Unfortunately, there's only going to be highlights of the women's race available. 2 days after that, we will have the Bredene Kokzijde Classic, and then on Sunday, it's the next round of the Women's World Tour. It's the Trofeo Alfredo Binda, where the world's best will once again converge, including Sarah Gigante, the Australian star taking on one of her first big European races. Please check territory restrictions where you are. I'm going to put a link of the calendars into the description just below this video. Now on to the case of Dr. Richard Freeman. The former Team Sky and British cycling doctor was last week found guilty at a medical tribunal of knowingly ordering testosterone with the intention of doping an unknown rider. It was the end of a long and often messy trial, but in fact it's not the end at all, is it? It's just the beginning, as the verdict has left us all with far more questions than answers. It leaves the reputation of cycling's governing body here in the UK in tatters, quite frankly. A body which prides itself on marginal gains and attention to detail, but which failed in the most simplest of due diligence when it came to record keeping and transparency. We now know the substance was ordered and it was received at the British Cycling headquarters in Manchester, but we don't know why or who it was for. And that means there is now an entire generation of hugely successful riders, both at British Cycling and at Team Sky, with a cloud of suspicion hanging over their heads. Clive Efford, who is a Member of Parliament and a board member of the Digital Culture, Media and Sports Select Committee, has said that Sir Dave Brailsford should be suspended from his role as team principal of Ineos Grenadiers. Brailsford was of course at the helm of both organisations at the time, but has remained silent on the matter this week, short of a brief statement released by his team Ineos Grenadiers. In conclusion, it's just a real mess, isn't it? And one that needs tidying up before any of us can move on. It's sad, quite frankly, that we're still having to talk about these things at a time when cycling has never been more entertaining. It leaves us, once again, questioning the performances that we're witnessing, which we are entirely entitled to do given the sport's dismal record when it comes to performance-enhancing drugs. Right, that is all for now. I very much hope we'll have your company again for the abundance of racing that's coming up this week though. Thanks for watching, see you soon.